agenda?
I move to approve the agenda.
Second.
That.
Thank you. All right, any questions on the agenda today? All in favor, raise your hands. Great, that is unanimous. Thank you, Vincent, for coming down. We have been looking forward to getting a training on how we improve as a board. So it was interesting walking through the assessments. I think we're looking forward to seeing what you have to show us and then helping us figure out an action plan for
Awesome.
improvement.
Yeah,
So I will turn it over to you.
well, thank you. Thank you for taking the time to go through the survey. I know it's long and arduous. I think in the email, I say it'll only take you 25 minutes and it's okay, it takes longer than that. But I'm just trying to bait you in. I'm just really delighted to be here. I mean, I think, I've worked off and on with this board for last couple of years. It feels like, and so it's nice to just finally make it to Creswell. Yeah, the blush isn't off getting back on the road again. I mean, I spent 2 years working virtually with boards and I just love getting out in the communities. That's what I did when I worked for Extension. I got to travel all over the state, so I just love doing this. So it's a delight to see you, look in your eyes and see you.
We're happy to be back in person as well.
Yeah, it really makes a difference. I have to apologize. It took us a little while to get all the responses in on the report on the survey, and then I've been traveling all at the beginning of this week. So I was not able to get a report to the board. Have you review this report ahead of time? There's a lot of information here. That said, I created a nice slide deck to kind of walk us through some key points in the data. We're not going to cover this whole report. There is a lot here. And I think when I gave you guys the overview, I told you that these self-assessments, the previous one was based on the 5 roles of the board from Mary Dawn and Del Gardell and the Lighthouse inquiries. Since then, the research connecting school boards to student outcomes has really matured. And this survey was created by Dr. Tom Alsbury, who uses it all over the United States. And he consults with, major, big districts like Seattle. I think he works in Philadelphia. I think he has worked with LA Unified. I mean, big districts. So it's a very robust tool. It provides a lot of information. You're not going to plumb the depths of this report. So there's a lot here. So even though you haven't fully reviewed it, that's okay. We'll just walk through some key parts of it. Areas where you have strength, areas where there's room for growth, and then some areas where there was some disagreement, and we'll poke into those a little bit and inquire and see what patterns emerge. What do you guys see? So with that, I'm just going to dive in, and with my first thing I want to do is ask kind of this grounding question. What does board self-evaluation mean to you as a board member and for the whole board?
Well, for me, a basic tenet would be we are supposed to be an institution that supports teachers and students that are supposed to be in a continual learning environment. And I think we haven't followed through on the action plan piece, right? Where we actually put into action improvement. We've evaluated ourselves. We've looked back and went, what do we think we did good? What do we think we've done bad? But we haven't taken the next step of how do we actually improve? So I know that's one thing that we've talked about before, but the action is important to me when we talk about self-evaluation, because it's not just introspection. I think we need to do the second part too. So that's what comes to mind.
Yep. Other board members.
Yeah, I agree with Lacey. I see it as twofold. One is to answer the question of, are we helping the kids? And two, how do you get better? And I'm not sure how well we answered the first question in the past. And I don't think we've really gone too far on the second, ever. So I think this process will answer the first question and help us make some progress on the second. And so that's what board self-evaluation means to me. Specifically this one.
Other thoughts? No thoughts? That's okay.
I was just like, I kind of disagree with both of them, so I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, I think that it is a good tool to evaluate where we're at and where we want to go.
Yeah.
And so I think that that's what I feel about.
Yeah, and that's exactly how it's intended to be used. So, I mean, it really, the next question is, why should we evaluate the board's performance? And I mean, first one is, getting to Tim's point is, how effective are we? How are we impacting kids? The questions that are asked, the standards that are in this evaluation and the questions are asked are based on nationally normed research on board behavior and practices that positively impact student outcomes. Okay, so that's what this is all aimed at. We know that there are certain things that boards can do and ways that they do things that translate into improved student outcomes. That's what this is all about. And so it's really aimed at that. How do we make ourselves more effective as a governing body of a learning institution? The next piece is, what you folks are talking about, holding yourselves accountable. That, we hold the system accountable, but we want to hold ourselves equally accountable to that. And then along with that is, building, our connection with the organization and with our community, fulfilling those three crucial relationships that the board has. First is your relationship with each other as individual board members, as a leadership team. The next is between the board and the superintendent and district team, and then also between the board and the community, because the community is watching and listening. And then the last one is the obvious one, is what you were talking about is, create a plan to improve our practice, because we're all human. We're all on a pathway of improvement. That's why we have superintendent evaluation. It's for the same reason. And the reality is that none of you knew how to be a school board member until you sat down in that seat and started doing it. So none of us step into this role as an expert, or it's very rare that a person has deep experience in school governance and then gets on a school board. Very rare. Okay. So here are the 12 standards that you were assessed on. And you can find these. Yeah, these are on your first page, and you can start looking at that histogram. This page here. And what is it? Page, I don't know, whatever. It's page 1. It's the one with histogram, with the colorful histogram. And so you'll remember your responses to this: accomplished, effective, developing, and ineffective. And so I want you to just take a look at this. Now, normally you would have your leisure to just look at this and digest it. But I want you to just look at that data. And while you're doing that, I'm gonna pop up another slide here that really, goes back to that research that I was talking about. What are those behaviors that are so crucially important that the research shows is crucially important to what we do? And the first one here is vision and goals. And so you'll see that that's standard 1. It really stands out here. And that's really setting clear expectations about what's possible for kids. And what is your vision for what education in the Creswell community? What's that going to look like? And you're representatives of the community. That's your job. You set that vision. Next one is climate and resources. This is about, reallocating and resources, whether that's, money or time or attention, to be aligned to these vision and goals. And then also, developing an organizational culture that starts in the boardroom. You set expectations for how the district is gonna operate. You build that culture with your superintendent. Okay. Next one is data and monitoring. I think this is standard 5. I remember that. I did. I'm getting better. So, I mean, at OSBA, we're just finishing up our first year with these standards. This is all new to us as well, so I'm learning as well. So data and monitoring, you know, prior to 2009, before No Child Left Behind, school boards and indeed, you know, school districts could get by without looking at data, disaggregated student data. Now it's just an accepted norm or standard of practice for our work. We just have to be looking at our student data to know who our students are. What are their needs and understand them. Next one is cohesive teaming. This is what the board is doing right now. You're meeting with your superintendent in the room, you have staff in the room, and you're learning how to improve your practice. Cohesive teaming is about building relationships, but acting as a professional learning community. And I'm borrowing that term from the teaching profession, because you have grade level teams that meet as PLCs, and they're working on their own professional development. As leadership team, you need to be doing that as well. Next one is stakeholder and community engagement. This is standard 2, community engagement. And this is a crucial role for the board. You are uniquely equipped. You were popularly elected to your positions, unless you're appointed, but in which case, even if you were appointed, you were selected by the governing body to join it. Either way, you are embedded in your community. You're bringing community into the governance process, but then you're also the eyes and ears of your superintendent as well, district, bringing community in and celebrating the success of the district outward. And then a policy and accountability is how we operationalize our governance. We set our expectations in policy, and we set up systems of accountability to track the district's progress towards those. Okay. So I was jabbering at you and pulled your attention away from the histogram, that you shouldn't have done, but, okay, so looking at your data, what do you see? And it's okay. Start with the very most simple, most basic things, just looking at it overall.
A lot of blue.
There's a lot of blue, yes.
Gonna say the green and the blue are, are on the better end of the rating. And so when you stack those up, we're kind of like C's across all of them, with the exception of a couple, we get into the B's.
So
So
I'll
we're average.
I'm gonna pull the curtain back a little bit. When we at first blush, when we look at data like this, usually what we're looking at is the 70% line. And we like to see the accomplished and effective, the blue and the green, adding up to 70% or more. That's kind of where what we'd like to see.
Man, the overachiever in me is not happy with that bit. Right?
So Lacey, you're surfacing the other thing that I'm noticing here is that there's not a lot of green. What I'm seeing is a board that are individuals or a board that has high expectations for your performance, which is not a bad thing. So I'm also not seeing it. Well, I'm speaking for you. Go ahead, keep talking.
You were going, you're not seeing a lot of red. Is that gonna be your next statement?
Some red,
The
but
other-
not a lot.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's some red, but not a lot. I'm not seeing any fires burning out of control. Okay,
Good.
so I see.
I guess what I see is a good place to. I was gonna say a good place to start, but it's actually. Not a good place. It's a good place to be. It's definitely a good place to start from.
I would agree. Yeah, when I looked at this, I was like, oh, okay. It was like, all right. And I don't always have that response. And sometimes it's like, oh, goodness, I got some work to do. How am I gonna do this?
Turn your car around.
No. No,
Can I share an insight that I was struggling with when I was answering the questions?
yeah, I love
Some
feedback,
of,
please.
some of these, I think, like the community engagement, we've got a bump in this, right? It's one of our higher green marks.
Mhm, yeah.
In large part, that is due to Mike and Julie.
Oh,
So in answering the questions, like as a board, okay, we're talking more. But I think that's because the more they're getting information out, and especially COVID, right? Like not their doing. But in response to the community, there's more information going out. And so I have more opportunities to talk with people. Parents are asking more. So, but that's, even if without COVID, there's things that because of what staff are doing, it's helping us.
Mhm.
So it's not because of us. That was my insight.
Mhm. Done. Any other thoughts on that topic? Let's just like go down that bunny trail. And then we'll come back to this because it's a really important insight.
Okay.
Any other thoughts on community engagement? And the board's work around community engagement? Because I have some additional thoughts on that subject. You'll see in the slides.
How many more people have had more parents come talk to them because of emails coming out, stuff, right, that didn't happen before COVID? Right, so it's the environment, and it's not because we've done something different over the last couple years as a board. The school district has.
Okay. Okay, so why don't we just put a pin in that, hold on to it, and we'll go over it.
Happy to do that.
We'll go over standard two.
Okay,
We'll go through standard two, because I definitely saw some interesting things around community engagement. I'd like to discuss it before.
Okay.
Okay, what else are you seeing in the histogram? Where are you the strongest?
relationship with Mike.
Hmm?
Hopefully he feels that's a two-way street.
Yeah, I always like it when I see big numbers on 11, standard 11 is really important. That's one of the foundational ones.
Mhm. Mhm. 8 as well, learning organization.
Mhm.
I do think as a board, throughout all the conversations, we've tended to have an open mind, both from staff and hearing each other when we have discussions on things. So that's, I mean, I'm not surprised by that a bit. I think that tends to be our mindset.
Great. Anything else popping up?
I think that is the most negative part would be the cultural responsiveness. That's our most ineffective.
Yeah, that's where you scored yourselves
We
down.
scored ourselves down the most.
Mhm. And we're gonna talk about those. It's okay. We'll walk through it. Anything else? So I kind of did your homework for you. So yeah, strengths, yeah, definitely. Standard 8, learning organization, systems thinking. Your highest scores were in community engagement and then standard 11, which is kind of like roles and responsibilities all rolled together.
Mhm.
Not totally shocking. You guys are a strong board.
Mhm.
I wasn't shocked by that.
Mhm.
Yeah, that was really important.
Mhm.
So when boards score themselves low on standard 11, it makes everything else harder.
Mm.
If you don't have that, then we kind of start there and then work our way up.
Mhm.
So that's a really important precursor. It means you have a solid foundation to work from. And then you have strong community engagement. That's great. We'll talk about systems and how you can, some things that I pulled out, because you'll notice as you get deeper into this report, you'll notice that all the questions are related. Standards are related to each other. It's kind of like a network.
Mhm.
Okay. Areas for growth. So yeah, you scored yourselves lower on S1, vision directed planning. That isn't one of the important ones. Okay, going back to here, vision and goals, the top one up there, that is a key job of the board. It's an important thing. You scored yourselves lower in vision directed planning. So that is that. If there was a red flag in this report, that's the one that stood out to me. S4 accountability, systems of accountability, those really stem out of that vision directed planning. You know, for when we have priorities, then we can build systems of accountability to those priorities. But if we don't have that vision directed planning, it's hard to have systems of accountability. So you don't have anything to hold people accountable to. So you scored yourselves down on cultural responsiveness, and then you scored yourselves down on innovation and creativity. We're going to spend some time there as well. Okay. So let's start walking through the report. And so Lacey, you wanted to talk about community engagement. So let's go ahead and jump in there. Okay. So
Page 6. Is that
Yep.
where we are?
page 6. Yeah, so you're definitely looking at this. Board promotes practices that solicit input, involvement from all segments of the community. Actually, later on, I have a thing where I pulled out things where there's some disagreement. This was one of them. There was, Jill, you notice one person was like accomplished, 3 saying effective, but we had 2 that were like developing.
Okay, thank you for explaining the numbers. I was just gonna ask what that meant.
Yeah, so that's, those are the counts of responses. So
Okay.
it should always add up to 6 because we had 6, we had a full board response.
Thank you, great.
So discussion around that. And for those who wind up put developing, what were your thoughts there? And maybe why did you score that low? And how could the board grow here?
I don't know if I put developing, but I probably would because everyone knows me, but I can own it. I think I did, and it was because I still struggled with the conversation we had around the public comment policy. And I still struggle with it, to be quite frank.
I struggle with implementing it.
And so that's, for me, that's a tough one, because I don't know, we haven't found a good solution. Probably no one has, probably not one has in that position.
Okay. You want to take a bunny trail on communicate on public comment?
Yeah, well, I mean, because of the change in regulations, we have to find a way to allow an equal way for online comments and in-person comments. And I'm still struggling with the time frame that we put on it and some of the dialogue we had around it. So at the time, I think that had happened fairly recently, so I'm sure I probably would have rated that because I want to be as inclusive as we possibly can. And I'm not saying that we can be, because I know there's limitations in technology, but that is a struggle for me on how do we ensure everyone gets a voice when they want a voice.
So I'm going to say something really disruptive. I'm going to suggest that the board not think of public comment as community engagement. Because I mean, let's be frank. I mean, public comment, people come in, the people who are comfortable stepping into a school board, sitting in I don't know how you configure your board, but often the board is on a dais, actually physically elevated. And then you got this big giant desk in front of you, separating you. It's a very intimidating environment. And then they get to speak for 3 minutes, sometimes only 2. And then board members just stare at them. And then the board chair says, thank you, and they walk away. That is not engagement. Engagement is a reciprocal relationship.
It's a
So
lot to push yourself to do that, though. It's hard for me not to find that very important that you would put yourself in that position to say that.
yeah, no, I completely agree. It's a really, for someone to have the courage to do that, it's a big gesture. I would suggest that public comment really only serves the board. It is a time for the board to hear from the public in a certain sector of the public. Those are people who are comfortable coming before the board to speak to them in that way. And on topics that the board is going to take up. If you want to engage the community, then you need to get out of the boardroom to do that and think much more broadly about engagement. So yeah, those are 2 different things. I mean, the public comment is this kind of tradition that we hang on to, but it's not a great tool for engagement.
define a definition of what we should be thinking about for this conversation. Do we think about conversations that we have with people as an individual board member outside of this room? Or when we come together as a board to do something? And I'll give you two examples, like which one should I be thinking about? When Mike had his strategic planning process like 3 years ago. Great on, I think, community engagement, invited people in. There were not only people that he invited to be on the panel to work through facilitated conversations, but we had, I don't know, almost like an open house, invited people in.
Mhm.
That was the most engagement we've had in a long time.
Mhm.
But then there's also, I have 3 different groups I am a part of, and we talk about school stuff. But it's me individual, it's not a board, right? These are neighborhoods, families,
Mhm. That's,
different small groups.
that is-
And the school topic comes up and I end up talking school board for probably 20 minutes every time we meet.
yes,
So are
all-
both of those?
both of
okay.
those are engagement.
All right,
So when you go and talk to civic groups, when you go to talk to the PTA, and you have a conversation in the grocery store,
okay,
all of that is, when you have a beautifully facilitated community engagement exercise for SIA, I'm assuming that's what that was.
mhm,
You know,
that counts too.
that all is community
Okay.
engagement, and the board will have varying connections to that.
Mhm.
And this is a real conundrum, because a lot of the time, and so Truth in Advertising, my own board has been struggling with community engagement because we delegate so much of it to the district. To district, we say, superintendent, go out and form a committee and go get this information, then give us a report on it.
Mhm.
We don't actually do it. So are we doing community engagement? No, the district's doing community engagement.
Mhm.
We're just directing them to go do it. So
Mhm.
So what's the feedback loop as we do gather these or have these conversations? Because one thing to be engaged and have lots of we're lucky to live in a small community, we get to have a lot of conversation. So what's the best way for us as a board to bring that back and facilitate change in our district? When we hear things that we think are important.
So I think, particularly with communication, because apparently, you said that the district has been doing a good job with engaging the community. I think partnering with district staff and being part of an overall district communication plan is probably the optimal place. So doing that collaboration with your superintendent. Do you have a dedicated communication person?
I do.
You're it. She's in the room. Awesome. So I mean, I'm betting that these two people would probably love to help the board think about creative ways that the board can be more engaged in engaging or doing more community engagement work.
Mhm. So whenever I hear things in my small groups, if I hear things that are surprising, I typically call Mike and go, this is what this group is believing. And it's typically on operational stuff.
Yeah.
So sometimes he's able to address it and sometimes, generally he addresses it.
Well, sometimes I can speak to it, but but my objective is to address everything that comes my.
Yeah, you address everything with me in terms of addressing it with the community. There's been times where I've said they're confused and he's like, we need to do a survey. So a month later, a survey will come out in order to get information, which is, I think, I think it's super helpful. But then sometimes it's pretty general. He wouldn't be able to address it very well with the community. So, but beyond talking with Mike, I don't bring that stuff back to the board. I don't know if I should.
Yeah, I guess that's my question. Like, what is
That's what I thought.
engagement?
I was like,
Like,
Yeah.
Is that a two-way street or is it taking in information? What makes the board
Good
successful?
question.
Yeah, that's a really good question. Sometimes a lot of that information gets operational.
Uh-huh.
You get this
Most of
chatter
it is.
that's happening in your ear. A lot of it is operational, in which case
Mhm.
just reach out, say, hey, if you're doing a check-in, have regular check-ins, feeding that to your superintendent. But then there's sometimes, these things kind of coalesce and it's like, there might be a policy component, there's board work here.
Mhm.
And if that's the case, then as board members, we want to reach out to our chair and say, hey, I'm getting the sense that there's, maybe we need a resolution. There's a thing, this is a thing.
Yeah.
And then,
Yes.
chair and superintendent and board member, we put our heads together. It's like, okay, how should the board engage in this? And that's more of a, that's exercising your legislative function.
Mhm.
Maybe this is gonna be a policy change. I don't know, and just finding a little pathway to make that board work. Because there's only certain things that the board can engage with.
Yeah.
I mean, if it isn't policy,
And
No.
that's not always what we hear about.
no.
Rarely.
I was
do
gonna
they
say,
hear about
normally we do
policy.
not come to
Yeah.
us about policy.
No,
We
they
come to
don't.
us
They
about
say, I got-
everything else.
Yeah, I have this burning issue, but when you have 15 people talking about the same burning issue, maybe there's a policy thing
Yeah.
there, and
Yeah.
it really does depend.
Yeah.
I want to draw our attention over here to question 15. So the board advocates for a public policy that supports education through relationships with community leaders, city and county government officials, and state legislators. So you're kind of meddling here. I mean, there's disagreement here. And this popped up elsewhere. Engagement with stakeholders, external to stakeholders. And there's a few questions that invoke these same groups.
Mhm.
And you guys had some disagreement or slowed yourselves down in this space. Any discussion there?
I kind of feel like Lacey, I feel like our interaction with these people are not necessarily the same as Mike. Mike
Mhm.
has a lot of interaction with
Mhm.
the stakeholders in the community, but I don't feel like as a board, I'm not so sure that we have a lot of interaction with county government officials, state legislatures, things like that. I mean, that's not something as a board that we are, focused on. We hear a lot of feedback from Mike from all of the things that he does with these groups of people, but I don't know that as a board, I feel like we're completely, we have those same relationships.
Mhm.
So you elected officials, you can have those relationships, right?
Yeah.
I just want you to know that you
Yeah,
can,
yeah.
that you can pick up the phone and call your legislator.
yeah.
get it.
And I know that people have done certain.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and as I was thinking back through, we've traveled to Salem and done advocating, especially around budgets. But I haven't over the past year. Right, like COVID is a little bit different. If I think long-term, what would I normally do? Well, February, we're typically up at Salem. I mean, I've made 2 trips every February for several years, but not during COVID.
Do you maintain relationships with your city councilors or? I see county commissioners here in Lane County, so.
I meet
It's
with,
kind of
I
hard to
meet with
reach
our
those.
mayor every quarter,
Oh, okay.
but I have a personal relationship with him, not just because of the board, but we talk about all kinds of things,
Okay,
so.
I'm just kind of poking the bear here.
I don't even know who's on the city council, just to be honest. I do know the mayor.
Yeah,
I don't know who's on.
yeah,
city council.
everybody knows Dave.
Yeah. And I probably talked to more county government officials.
All right,
When I went through the platinum training,
yeah,
I was engaged with state legislatures for a time, but I have not maintained.
yeah.
In
we
fact,
don't-
those legislators have changed. And so I don't know the current one.
That's cool that you did leadership board. Let's see. I did that too.
Mhm. I
That
think,
was great.
I think COVID has changed. I think COVID changed some of our standard routines. And so I don't think we're in a standard routine on some of this.
And for me, I came in, right,
Yeah,
You
I was
know,
gonna say,
so
there's
we
several-
came in right when it was like, this was,
Yeah,
I've only been on a board the majority of the time through COVID,
yeah,
so.
and same with Mark. He
Yeah,
wouldn't
so
have the
my
whole routine
experience
even
is
established.
maybe, reflected in my answers, is that we haven't done some of this stuff during
Mhm.
COVID.
So just a suggestion, because this is an area of strength. Think about brushing off those old routines and
Mhm.
maybe meet with the city councilor to go to Salem. Yeah, we're gonna go to Salem, but
Mhm.
I'm not gonna get off topic. Okay, next one, systems thinking, standard 9, what page is that on? Real quicker. Standard 7. Standard 9.
22.
23. Or no,
22, 23. Yep, okay, what do we got here? Oh, there's one with some congruence over there on question 65. The board works collaboratively with other agencies to encourage dialogue that fosters continual growth. You know, that is actually a standard 2 question. It's a community engagement question. See how these get connected? So systems thinking, but it's couched in systems thinking because you are one public entity or a governing body on a public entity that's in an ecosystem of public entities. So that's why it's here in systems thinking. How do you fit the system? So thoughts on this one? Working collaboratively with other agencies to encourage dialogue that fosters continual growth. Now, surely you have collaborative, sorry. It's my 3rd training in the week, so I'm a little wrong. Surely you have collaborative relationships with, you know, other local government agencies.
Police Department, Department of Health Services.
Yeah.
United Way. Probably 12 different, 13 different agencies that support the district.
Yeah.
In one way or another.
Right. So it sounds like the board is allowing the superintendent to maintain those relationships. Or at least there's some disagreement here that someone said, yeah, we're definitely doing that. And there's 3 that are like, yeah, we're effective. And then one that's like developing, and one is like, someone said, not at all. Ineffective, but the board is ineffective in co-working collaboratively with external agencies. Thoughts here?
we have from time to time done some projects with city council and with the airport. But the COVID just stopped everything. And I don't know that we've gotten back on there. I know I haven't gotten back on track again.
Yeah.
We've, example, we got the streetlights out at the high school put in when a bunch of us got together with the mayor, and I don't remember who all was involved in it, but we've done some projects, but the COVID thing, but just I know myself, we got Gary had to get back into it.
So as I'm taking off my OSB hat, and really just talking as your colleague up north, you know, your superintendent is going to maintain these operational relationships. He's going to have that nuts and bolts kind of conversations, but I don't think there's any substitute for having a school board member have a meeting with, say, the county commissioner, and just saying, hey, I just really appreciate the work that county public health is doing in our district. It really is making a difference. And I just wanted to let you know that, you know, over a cup of coffee, face to face, and talk about details and tell stories of how that's impacting kids. That is a really, really powerful interaction. So when commissioner gets around to budget time, is going, oh, this relationship with school districts, yeah, we're going to protect that line. Because I heard from the folks down in Creswell that that's really making a difference for them. So we're going to protect them. So you're backing up your superintendent's operational work with political pressure. It's essentially what you're doing. But you're fostering a relationship. And you're also, you're putting a face on it. When you start telling stories about kids, and when you go to Salem, do this, you know, talk about how programming that, you know, that state school funding is providing, the stuff that you've been doing to support your kids, is we're looking at probably a decline in funding or below continuing service level. Telling a story about the work that you've been doing for your kids is crucial and important. So yeah, that piece. Okay, coming back to systems thinking. Yeah, I mean, let's look at where we have some standout. The board team is solution oriented, number 64. Just a really remarkable response there. So then not only is this, this speaks to not only your approach to how you work, but it's how you work with each other. There's quite a bit embedded in that question. And then the board works to avoid policy decisions that shifts problem from one part of the system to another. I think that question 60 is probably the most important one here. It's seeing our school district as an integrated system, that when we do something over here, it's going to have a cascading effect, or can affect other parts of the system, is really, really important. And it sounds, it sounds like you feel that you're effective in that space. Any other thoughts on systems thinking? We're just we're identifying strengths because these are the foundations that we're going to stand on. These are the things that really stood out as important. So we're going to use these to do work where we need to do some growth. Any thoughts here? And let's jump forward to standard 11. I'm looking at my time and I want to keep moving. Standard 11, you guys are strong. There's a little bit of calls for development where the superintendent trust and respect one another. That's question 72. There's a couple people that said that you're developing there. Tell me about your superintendent evaluation process.
Oh, I actually think we do well with it.
It's developing. I think that this last one.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it's one of the things that I think we're consistent on each year. So that's why I think we do well.
How often does the board meet with the superintendent? Round evaluation over the year. You just meet once or you meet 2 times?
I think we said in the fall is typically when Mike will bring us goals for us to agree on.
Mhm.
And then we don't do midterm evaluation. We will meet in the spring to talk about an update and then we meet in executive session to talk through results. So there's a goal setting conversation in the fall. And then typically a process check-in, make sure we're still on timelines. He provides the self-assessment and then we meet in executive session in the spring.
Okay.
Right? Am I forgetting a step? Okay.
So do you guys use the new COSA OSBA workbook for your superintendent evaluation?
What did we use?
Say one that went out in 2020.
Rubric.
We
We
did
use
use
the national standards and the rubric that goes with those. They're similar to what COSA put together.
Okay. So I would suggest having more frequent. So in that workbook, and I think there's a lot in the workbook that I like. And I'm speaking not because I'm trying to promote, we don't make any money on it anyway, but more as a former board chair and having done superintendent evaluations and having to have administered that work, I really appreciate, the clarity of the document. The thing that I really appreciate most, it was kind of like the aha moment, is that they recommend 3 check-ins. So 1, they do goals. They have the superintendent do goal setting immediately on the heels of the evaluation. So you're seeing your superintendent goals in the summer in your first check-in. So you can go into executive session if you want, but or you can do that in an open way. So you see those goals fairly early. And then you have 3 check-ins. So summer, fall, and then winter. So, and then you have your final executive session. So there's no surprises. It just makes it a lot more clear. And it allows the board and superintendent to go into executive session, have those gritty conversations. And maybe they're not gritty. Maybe it's a time to make small calibrations if you need to, but it gives you that opportunity to cultivate that relationship and respect.
Does the OSBA format use like peer evaluations or 360 evaluation, that part of it. We don't, I'm just wondering.
So we have a targeted feedback survey that we do. We don't do 360s because that's basically a broadcast survey to get everybody in. And they end up becoming comment box. So the targeted feedback survey is designed to fill in gaps in the board's knowledge. Because superintendents do stuff that we don't see, like managing the organization or instructional leadership. That stuff happens in school buildings and they're not in school buildings, except very infrequently. So we, or his engagement with these, agencies or stakeholders in the community, we're not in those conversations. So how do we know that? So we survey those people. So we survey teachers, building administrators, and those key stakeholders in the community, get them to provide input. And those people are identified collaboratively between the superintendent and the board. So again, there's no surprises. We know who we're surveying. You don't get to see their comments or the data that they provide. When we do it, we own that data. And then we provide a summary report to you. So there's a data report and then themes that we pull out of. There's a couple open-ended questions at the end of the survey. So we pull some themes out. And it's all aimed at supporting the administrator's growth. That was a pitch for the TFS. Okay. So question 71. This is another one with some disagreement here. Each member of the board understands and respects the distinction between the board's responsibilities and the superintendent's duties. Someone put a ineffective here, and that is that person.
I feel like that one wasn't me. I will be honest when it was me. I know my role, I just don't always
I
like
took
it.
it 3 times, but I don't think it was me.
I don't remember. I don't.
Do we have any insight into why someone would have some concern? Because everybody else was like, we're accomplished or effective here, and I just.
Mike, are we ineffective?
Well, I may be,
No.
by one vote.
I'm sure that was marked at us, not at you.
Yeah. Yeah, this is not Mike's performance. This is the understanding of policy versus operations, right? That's what this is getting to.
Fundamentally,
Yeah.
staying in lane. Embracing our governance role, staying out of operations.
Yeah.
Staying out of micromanaging, looking over somebody's shoulder and.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Yeah, I wanted to check in on this one because it was like, oh,
Yeah.
whoa.
I don't understand the ineffective one. I easily see why we're effective as opposed to accomplished. Because I know in conversations, I'm like, here's feedback, here's something that's happening, here's something a community member said, it's all operations. I still want to know what's going on. Mike tells me in our one-on-ones. I don't direct policy, but this is such a small community and one school, per like one high school, one elementary. It's hard to not want to know.
Mhm. Sometimes it's just hard not to know. Hey, I grew up in Reedsport.
Yeah.
I mean, I
Yeah.
get it.
It gets, yeah, and teachers often, as do you and others that have gone through here that have connections, right? Teachers will come and talk to me. Why are you guys doing this? I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. Please tell me. Like, that's an operational piece. We don't set, so even teachers have a hard time understanding the distinction between operations and policy. And so we're talking all around it.
Okay. Anything on the page here that's standing out to members as we're looking at this? I mean, overall, this is looking, I'm seeing a lot of green and blue. There's a couple areas of yellow, but overall, looking at these questions, this looks really good to me. Okay, so we've been talking about the good stuff. Let's go to the tough stuff. Okay. Back to the front of the document, standard one. Oh, boy, yeah. So let's start with question 4. I know I pulled it up here. I have my list of things here. I'm looking at where there's disagreement. Board collaborates with the community to articulate core values and beliefs in the district. We've got some effective, developing, and ineffective here. I guess my first question is, does the board have district priorities or no, I don't want to state strategic plan because that's an operational plan. But do you have district priorities, vision, mission, and goals, big goals?
We do, but they're very old.
And does the board use those very goals? You don't.
Not this board since COVID. No.
Okay, okay,
In all honesty, I don't, as long as I've been on the board, even pre-COVID, I don't remember, other than setting them, I don't remember talking about them.
Right, that would be correct.
We set them, we were good at setting them.
Because it's on the agenda.
okay. So now I have a better sense of where some of this yellow and red is coming.
Yeah.
So when those were developed, did you bring community into that process? And so people were,
I don't think we did.
I don't recall doing that.
And maybe like, because we kind of use the same ones and like maybe tweaked them over the years, so maybe originally, but probably not long.
Yeah, I would say we didn't. We did not unless it was through survey or data, like student data.
so see here in question 4, that connection to standard 2, community engagement. They're all over the place. Okay, let's look for other hot spots here. Yeah, and so question 5 goes right along with the question I just asked. Can board members can clearly articulate the vision and strategic goals of the district?
I can't.
I mean, you might have some idea of what the superintendent and
Yeah.
staff are working on.
Right.
But you don't have overarching goals, so.
I'm good then.
So definitely the board regularly monitors progress of strategic goals focused on improving student learning. Again, yeah, so I think we've identified the underlying issue with vision directed planning is that you have some dusty goals and the board isn't using them right now, so. Okay, great. I'm glad when we can just drill in and get to the root of the problem. Okay, standard 4, accountability, setting high expectations, which is directly related to what we were just talking about. So it's hard, if you're not using your strategic documents, it's hard to have systems of accountability. So let's just take a look at this. What do I have? Okay, so. Oh, yeah, there's question, yeah, this is question, yeah, we can jump forward to question 33 and question 26. 26, you know, the board regularly reflects on its performance and makes substantive changes based on the results of self-evaluation. Lacey, as soon as you sat down in the chair, you were like.
I was probably
That kind-
number 1. I did this long enough.
You
I don't
marked it,
remember.
you're the one that marked the red.
I
didn't you?
probably put a
It's
1
you.
because I know we don't do an action plan to improve, right?
See?
That's been my pet peeve.
And then question 33, yeah.
Okay, and I don't have to sit here and think it was me.
Probably was me. Me or
Question
Shannon.
33 on page 13, board regularly establishes performance goals for itself. Yeah, there's a big splash of red there, so clearly it was high time to do board self-assessments as well, so great. I'm gonna keep moving along here. Okay, so accountability, so holding ourselves accountable, definitely something we gotta do. Okay. Ensuring funding, you feel pretty confident with that. You've scored yourselves fairly well in budgeting as well. Board models a culture of high expectations throughout the district, question 27. Yeah, doing all right there. You say you're effective. Board's priority and focus is on student learning. That's question 28. Okay, but we got 1 on developing there. Question 29, aligning budget with student learning priorities. You're not, you know, you have strategic comments, but you're not using them right now, so it's hard to fulfill that.
And that one Mike did, we didn't, like, Our aligning our budget to our strategic goals was Mike aligning it to our strategic plan. We just had to approve it.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true, but you do have, it's an important checkpoint. You know, your role is informed oversight, so you should be able to clearly see how discretionary appropriations are aligned with district
I would
priorities.
love that. I would love more visibility into that. Just if we walk away with something from this,
He can do that
Yeah.
because I feel like I could do that in our budget.
Yeah.
Because we talk about that a lot.
that would be helpful for me.
And it's not only nice for the board, it's nice for the community
Agreed.
too,
Mhm.
because most people don't navigate public budgets like
Yeah.
as a normal part of their life.
I do.
Yeah.
But I do it as a job. That's why it's so easy. Tell me, Mike. I want to know. And he's got an answer.
Yeah. So, yeah, most people don't. Most people find public budgets completely impenetrable. They don't understand the jargon, they don't understand the layout, they don't understand the taxonomy of what
Yeah,
account,
It's not a personal
object,
checking account.
what account, I see it, I
Yeah.
can't, even I, 10 years on the school board, I still can't articulate what the number taxonomy is. Account, fund, object. So the three numbers that go for each thing.
Yeah. Fund is the only one that matters to me thus
Yeah.
far.
The biggest picture.
Yeah.
You're okay. You're doing well.
So anyway, okay. Question 30. So support or rewards consequences recognition systems for to encourage advancement of the district's strategic goals.
Mhm,
You're kind of all over the place on that one.
mhm.
I
So we-
personally think if we could find a way to make our strategic plan more visible to us regularly, this will be easy to be more effective in, because it's probably not that we're not effective, but I honestly couldn't tell you if we were or we weren't. Like,
I agree.
brass
There you go.
tacks type things.
Mhm, mhm.
Question 31. This one gives me a little bit of pause. Disaggregated student results and growth are measures against the expectations set by the district's strategic goals. We don't have district goals. Does the board look at data or track progress using data? Kind of has been
Well,
hard over the last
I was
few
gonna
years,
say,
but
again, that's a COVID question because I remember we had literal work sessions going through packets of data when students took the tests, right, the state
Mhm.
tests, and we always got the easy CDMs when they tested in the fall, winter, and spring. So we looked at some data and we got good at looking at the data, and the data disappeared in COVID.
Right.
So
We did some
this-
already did it, didn't we?
Well,
got
this
some-
last year, we
Yeah.
did, we put the I-rating data on the 3 benchmarks, but we also, you have goals around the 9th grade on track, graduation rates, attendance, and those things, and
And
that
the
data I
principals-
provide for you every year. in
Yeah.
the Spring.
And the
Perfect.
principals do provide in their monthly report for us, things like attendance.
Yep,
Kids
on
that are on track, so those kinds of metrics, yes. So I should have clarified what data are you looking at, because I can
Sure.
always go deeper in data.
The only data we
Yeah.
haven't been able to disaggregate is the state performance, because we haven't had
Yeah.
it.
oh, the SBAC.
That's the
Yeah.
only data we haven't been able to break down, because
Yeah.
we haven't been testing
Yeah.
until this last spring, so.
Did you use iReady for your micro?
We've been using iReady to measure the progress of our kids in math and reading.
That's gonna be way more useful than SBAC data.
Okay, that's good to know, and thank you for that clarification.
And I love that. I actually thought that was great data, and you know, I love data. The next piece for me is like, I don't know how to be a school board member. And so knowing how to take that data and do something with it will be important for me, because like, I can look at it and then I'm kind of at a loss, like, do we do something? Do we change something? Do we vote on something? Like, what do we do next?
Yeah.
That's the piece that for me, like, that would be helpful.
Wow, that's a great question.
I think so too. I think that was a great question.
Thank you. I'll just vote if you want me to, but I would love to.
I reject this data.
Yeah.
Go back and take it again.
Yeah. So that whole idea, and this is, so the missing piece here is district goals, you have district goals, and then those district goals will have measures associated with them. And you're not gonna have all of them. Your superintendent's awash in data. He's got tons of data that he's looking at. But the board, you need a subset of that, the ones that co-vary with lots of other indicators that are high level, like third grade reading, we know is a key predictor for student success later on in a student's career. So that's an important indicator. So that's one we're gonna hold on to. And there's a whole bunch of them. We have, know the big ones, third grade reading, fifth grade math, eighth grade science, ninth grade on track, ninth grade on track with algebra. And then graduation rate, those are the gold standard ones. And then attendance, discipline referrals, all that stuff. Okay, so that's the classic stuff. So if the board is regularly coming back to your goals, and using your goals to focus your attention, you'll keep coming back to that data, and you should have multiple check-ins in a year on that data.
Yeah.
I was really excited to hear that your principals are sharing like attendance data on a monthly basis, high resolution. That's really cool. That's good. That's important. So the board is really paying attention to that. That also motivates staff, and it's like, board's paying attention. Get those kids in the room, get them in the building, whatever it takes, so. Once you're doing that, then you'll start knowing what to do, because then you'll see patterns in the data. It's like, okay, this student subgroup is lagging. Why are they
Yeah.
lagging? What do we need to change?
And that's where I'm trying to like figure out how do we correlate those things. 'Cause in full transparency, my mind sees it in May, and by June. Not real there I mean, it's there, but I don't have like visibility. So if we had a way to monitor what those things were, not like every little thing, but like you said, our 5 touch points or whatever we want to make. And then how do we track those? And at what point do we say, these are decision-making things that we need to now decide something on? That would be helpful for me to feel like we're moving the needle in our district.
So another thing that you do with those check-ins is those monitoring sessions that you have, where you look at your 12 indicators, is that you develop talking points based on that. Because your staff are going to tell you what they're doing, try and move the needle on those, and so there's going to be success, and there's going to be places where we're struggling. And so there's a story to tell there.
Yeah.
And you guys are representatives of the community, so then you create a communication plan. Here are our 5 talking points. Okay, Tim, you're gonna go talk to these groups. You're gonna go talk to PTAs. And you're gonna go, someone's gonna go to Rotary, someone's gonna, and you farm yourselves out to different parts of the community and tell those stories. So that's a way that you can turn that into a communications activity or engagement opportunity.
Yes, let's do that.
Okay.
This is what I've been waiting for. Let's do this.
Okay, so accountability. We talked about holding ourselves accountable. Yeah, but we're starting to see this message. You seeing the message lifting out of this report? And I don't think I'm leading you too much here, but it's just we keep coming back to this idea of goal setting and, holding on to goals and that motivating a bunch of other things. Okay, so let's move on to 10, innovation and creativity. Score yourself the lowest here. There's no red. Oh, we got lots. Good. Okay. Board members create time and this. I'm on question 66. Board members create time and opportunities for their own creative thinking. Half are effective, half developing. Do you guys do any self-study at all? Do you guys share articles with each other? Work sessions where you just chat about education or chat with staff about education or anything like that?
No, I feel we're probably a little bit more reactive, or we pick up the routine stuff we know we're supposed to pick up.
Okay. So. Have you guys ever done a book study?
We used to with Todd. He would give us a book each year.
Oh.
And we would have to, he would give us homework.
Read a book over the summer?
Yeah, summer to fall, And probably half the time, we would find the time to check in, other times we wouldn't. So, again, we got started, but our follow through on the professional learning community approach that we talked about earlier wasn't there 100% of the time.
It seems to be coming back into vogue. The school board book club thing is kind of.
I would love
Friends.
articles. I can't say I don't want to read a book. Extra book.
Oh, no, you
Can I
chunk it
listen
up.
to
You don't
it?
read the whole book. You say, okay, everybody, read chapter one.
You have a school board, you can't just.
But I would love articles. I would love art, like, something that we could digest and have like a conversation with in a month, I think we would be really good at. I think we don't do well when we move things over multiple months because we get back into the day-to-day grind of things that we need to solve. At least I do.
You get school board stuff like articles and stuff in your like your news feed and stuff like that.
All that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like. You
But
can.
but we don't talk about it.
No, we
You know,
don't,
we don't.
but we do
So-
get it.
Yeah,
So,
we
I
read a
mean,
lot of them.
if there's one that's relevant to something that the board is doing, feel free to share that with your
Mike shares
colleagues.
some with us sometimes.
Good,
He
Mike.
does that.
So from a.
Mike's
meeting-
doing a great job.
Yeah.
being a school board member.
Yeah, he is. He is the glue. So to ensure we don't violate meeting policies, we can send it out as long as we don't reply to it.
That's correct. So
Okay.
you're not,
So-
well, no reply of substance. You can
Okay.
say,
Thank you.
I really appreciated that article.
Yeah.
That's fine, but yeah, no, like ongoing deliberation, because you need to do that in a public meeting. But yeah, but I mean, that's a great opportunity to like carve out 15 minutes. Yeah, did you read that article about, that this board chair had to clear the room in Broward County, it's like, oh my God. You can like totally do school board gossip.
No politics.
Yeah.
I don't know, I find some of those become sometimes.
That's what
They
seems to
captivate
show
me.
up in my,
Right.
so this is total bunny trail. I'm the disruptive meetings guy. So I like wrote the guide for disruptive meetings in Oregon, and sharing it out and helped her with that and all that. So I get those articles in my newsfeed all the time. So like a school board in the United States like blows out, like, yeah, they have
You
like
have
a
to
solar riot. It shows up in my newsfeed. So every time, when the Tallahassee Examiner, it's like just really these really niche, small newspapers. It's like, boom, yeah, that's what I get.
I hope we never show up in the newsfeed.
Even lucky, even people who maybe wanted to share difficult opinions have been very respectful and how, like in school board meetings,
I was gonna say.
in the school board, yeah,
Yeah.
have been very respectful.
Okay, so I totally derailed this, I'm sorry. So creating time to be creative. Building time into your work to be creative. Next one, 67.
So doesn't that go back to the whole, we don't have a goal?
Yeah.
I am not gonna spend time troubleshooting something that doesn't need to be troubleshot.
You're right.
So we need a goal in order to be creative. Otherwise, I feel like all we're doing is talking and that is a waste of our time. All of us are super busy.
Yeah, so what's the new thing? Whatever it is that you're working on. In Corvallis, it's math curriculum. Oh my
Yeah,
goodness.
that could be ours.
We
I have
are
a
like
strong
burning up
opinion.
on math curriculum. We're getting a lot of community engagement. on math curriculum.
Well, that's our thing this year, right?
That's our thing, you'll be needing.
You're on schedule.
Yeah.
Yay.
Good,
Good.
like last year, health the year before, and science the year before that.
Mhm. So yeah, so maybe start sleuthing math, math stuff, math curriculum, and what's the current thinking around that, and start handing those articles around. And if there's articles bubbling up from your team, then
Or,
yeah, shove those at the board and start thinking about math.
I would like that.
So when your teachers actually come in and say, okay, here are the options, and start having a conversation with you, you guys are like armed and dangerous.
can
and
actually
ready.
We actually
ask-
know what's
yeah.
going on.
We can
You can
ask
actually know.
intelligent questions.
Ask questions and engage in this rich conversation, which is really fun,
Mhm.
and it's productive work of the board, but
Mhm.
Absolutely.
I mean, board work should be fun.
Mhm.
Okay, at least for nerdy people like us. Okay. Board members partner with community and educational organizations to remove real and perceived barriers to creativity and innovation. Maybe. Do you have a public schools foundation?
Yeah, I run it.
Really?
Or CEF, the Creswell Education Foundation.
Wow, wow, that's a really strong relationship between those two organizations.
Yeah.
When the ED of the foundation is a school board member, wow, I thought we had a tight relationship with ours, but man, wow.
Where David left, there were two of us.
Wow,
Right.
okay. So, I mean, this is one where, yeah, a partnership between the district and the board and, you know, your public
Well,
schools
she
foundation. is a
she
national-
runs boosters or.
Oh, great.
I think that's one thing we do well is, we're pretty fairly,
So maybe this is a little bit better than the way you're painting it here. So this is where, you know, we're removing barriers to creativity. It's about pushing you out of your normal, out of your routine. So in Corrales, we have 2 meetings a year with our public school foundation board. We get both boards together. And they're big. They're like,
ours is not big.
15
Ours is here
people.
every month.
oh, so the,
It's mostly me.
but we get together for the express purpose of sharing ideas, coming up with ideas. What's the next thing in education? How can we better partner? How can we support each other?
I would really love to find a way, I mean, I know we can go to Lane ESD, but even for us to understand, like, I don't really understand what Lane ESD does for us. I'm not saying we should bring them here regularly, but maybe a way to share with us what they do or presentation would be great. And then we know we talk about funding every year. That part I totally understand, but.
Oh, really? Who's the superintendent? Or the
Skirdo,
Tony Skirdo.
yeah, would Tony come?
he has come in the past, and then when COVID hit, we did a virtual meeting.
Yeah, the virtual meeting.
But yeah, he didn't come out, but he does explain where our services are,
Yeah,
what services we're buying from them and what they provide.
yeah, getting under the hood of the ESD. They're a different animal. It's interesting. ESDs are really interesting.
I'm sort of on the board on that one. And if we could, you know, if you really want to know, they could spend some time and kind of explain what's going on there, because I think they do a really good job with the kids.
There's outside agency engagement right there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
you're absolutely right.
Yeah, we could, I mean, I could come up with, you know, spend 5 minutes or 10 minutes or something, kind of go through hit the highlights and stuff. That'd be easy to do.
So you can see a pattern emerging in the next one, 68, the board sets meeting agendas that allow to proactively identify and explore strategic issues. So you see it, the theme that's emerging is budgeting time. So you probably, how often, well, you meet once a month? How long are your meetings?
Couple hours.
2, 3?
No,
So 7 to 9, right?
Occasionally,
but not-
there's been a 3-hour meeting and we are like, what?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So you have nice compact meetings. So yeah, think about what you want to let go of in your meetings. Tell me about your principal reports.
They're pretty, no.
What did
No,
they,
I would love to hear your, I think you know more.
what did they tell you about?
They tell us the activities that are happening in the school, so there's always this is the calendar stuff. If you can come to some of these, here's what the kids are doing. We typically always get attendance stuff. If there's data, we get data stuff, like student data stuff. Grants they're getting or working on, we always get grant report outs. So that we know the changes that are coming.
What does the board work in that? Is there any board work?
Mm,
Then why do you do that?
Do you guys
'cause we
get
love to
monthly,
know.
do you guys get monthly administrative reports?
No.
No. I do know that I have been told that it's a difficult thing to do monthly and show us something new every month and feel like they're showing us. You know what I mean? Like if it was like a quarterly thing. I don't know. I know. I do love to see this stuff, but I do
I was
know
gonna
that
say, because
it's a
love to
lot.
see the
I know.
operations of
It's-
stuff.
it does, but like,
That's
I do
why.
know that it's a big I don't know.
So I'm being intentionally disruptive. And I know that, you know, and
I love
some,
that you
board-
think you're disruptive.
so.
Look how worried we are.
Because some boards, it's a big deal. They want to hear about, they want to hear about, you know, which teams, you know, won, you know, what championship. They want all that stuff to happen. It's not board work.
Right, it's just work.
It's just, no, it's performative is what it is.
Yeah.
And so it's not board work. It's not what you. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't care about those things. You should care about those things. But you can get that in, well, you can watch the Facebook feed of the district and get that information. Or if there are events that board members should be aware of, then, you know, your secretary can send that to you. You know, that can be an email. It doesn't need to be part of a time when the board is gavelled in and has the authority to do governance action and do some sort of work. So really comes back to this idea, what are our priorities? What do we want to do? And to do that, you have to let go of some things. And, you know, not dragging your principals out into a board meeting. You know, because
Oh,
they
I
gotta
think
get
we're
up the
having-
next day
Yeah.
and open a school.
I think
at
we're
over
happy to let
30.
go of that. There was a period of time during COVID where they didn't come and I thought that was fine.
Yeah.
I don't think any of us were concerned with that.
Now, if you have a thorny issue like that, you know, math, and it's gonna be a big change or something like that, having your educational experts come alongside the board to help you navigate, learn about that, navigate and be prepared to make that decision. That's a different conversation altogether, because that's work. Because they're the experts, they're the educational leaders and experts. There's no expectation that any one of you has any expertise in pedagogy or school administration.
I think it all comes back to, it would be easy to align an agenda if we had a priority or goals that we were actively working on.
Okay.
It all comes back to that, I think.
Great.
And I think it's easy to just do what we've always done.
Indeed it is. We have a routine.
We do.
we
We've
rinse
always
and
done it this
repeat.
way. And so I think that that's part of it.
But really digging in and getting engaged with the work that your educators are doing is much more rewarding than hearing about, you know, the school play or whatever like that. Go to the school play.
Go to school. play.
Go to the school
Yeah.
play.
Yeah.
Don't care about it in your
Yeah.
board
Do a
meeting.
good drama club.
Yeah.
Right.
Mr. Johnson did a great job.
Okay, so these are specific areas of incongruence. What a snazzy word. Incongruence just means disagreement. And we touched, I think on certainly the ones that were important. Yeah, I think we touched on all of these. Board performance goals, cultural responsiveness and bias. Oh, yeah, let's jump over to page 16 really quick, because there was a little bit on that, I think. Page, did I say 16? It's a little bit of time here. $14, $15, you guys are way quicker than me. 16. Oh, yeah, there's a bloodbath. Sorry, I blurted. Okay. And so what did I pull out? It was 42 through 45. Yeah, I wanted to talk about all these. Board outreach and community engagement activities accommodate cultural differences and values of communication. Yeah, and you guys are kind of all over the place here. Board actively encourages and expects the superintendent to facilitate participation in culturally diverse groups. One person's like, heck yeah. 4 of you are like, yeah, we do that. And one's like, not quite. Board has a process to review policies for cultural responsiveness and bias. Do you have an equity lens or decision-making lens that you use?
We do not.
Okay, so then the people that aren't developing an ineffective, I don't want to say ineffective. Do you have a process for assessing cultural responsiveness of policies and things like that?
We don't have a problem to troubleshoot. We don't know what that is. We know what our minority groups are.
Okay.
I'm not
Then,
saying we don't have a problem. We're not aware of what problem we would be working on.
Sure. yeah. Board members approach decision-making considering the many facets of cultural diversity, including indicate those indicated in the cultural responsiveness standard. In the cultural responsiveness standard. So all over the place. So cultural responsiveness is an area where, yeah, there was a lot of disagreement. Some people are comfortable, and there's definitely, you know, one or two people that are not comfortable with where the board's at. Maybe that's an area of,
Mhm.
Can you talk about some of the ways in Corvallis that they approach that?
being where we have done well. I think there are two standout examples where we've done a pretty good job with this. One, we took up a transgender policy 4 years ago. And part of that process was bringing staff and students, queer student folks into the boardroom, and then having a lot of personal conversations to really understand that issue and really come to, you know, really get a deeper understanding of that. I think we did a fairly good, there was a lot of firsthand board member engagement in that process. And then it was, I think 2 years ago, last year, no, it was last year. We did a overhaul of our educational equity policy JVB, you probably have it as well. But we went back and did an overhaul, and that's one where we took a step back, looked across the country at different educational equity policies and compared them, pulled what we really liked and reformulated and started wordsmithing that policy. We then had the superintendent form a committee, a diverse committee of folks from the community, or never met those people. They went through and revised the document and handed us this marked up document. It was just completely read with edits. And it was deeply powerful to see how they had changed the document. And so we did 2 iterations of that. The board then tinkered with that, reacted to it. We handed it back to that committee. They did another revision, brought it back, and then we did it first and second reading. And so it was just a really very engaged process. So, but we were incorporating, we were adding the concept of racial equity. So we were just focusing our attention on racial equity. And so that's the process that we used to do that, is we created a safe space for a racially diverse group to wordsmith our document for us and help us craft it. Man, it's really cool. It's on the web. You can go look at it. Policy JVB, really cool. Yeah, so that's just being very engaged and learning. You know, there's no substitute for hearing the lived experience of people. I don't know what type of equity training you do internally. You do training internally?
With our folks?
Yeah,
Yeah.
with staff. So I mean, in our staff, we use courageous conversation, Greg Singleton's work. We've done that for years. And board members go through that training as well. So then we go through that training with staff. I know when I did it, I've been through it twice with our district staff. And there's like dozens of staff members in the room. So it's like, yeah, it's people talking about their racialized experience, pretty heavy stuff. So just being there and going through it and just having that experience. It's just, yeah, there's no end to it. You're never there, you're never done. So it's just work you're always continuing to do. Sorry, that was stream of consciousness. I was like off the rails there. So yeah, being culturally responsive is just really just ensuring the voices that you're not hearing, or if you have a policy that is going to affect a certain population, making sure that those voices are in the conversation, that you're hearing those people. You know, and I mean, and fundamentally, I mean, it's really kind of strange that school boards all over the state and all over the country adopt policies without ever hearing from kids. but they're policies that affect kids. It's kind of astonishing that we do that. So I'm a pretty strong proponent of having student representatives on the board. Having them with you and having them participate in the meetings. And structuring your agenda so that they can participate. If you're gonna take up something like educational equity, have those kids in the room, to react to that. Or whatever, dress code or whatever policy you're gonna take up that brings student voice in your governance process is really, really useful. So that's another way to be culturally responsive. That was totally editorial.
No, but I like.
That was like, I was not OSBA talking. So cultural responsiveness, yeah, maybe an area of professional development. And you know what? I'm not gonna tell you that the Corvallis board hasn't figured out, we're still working on it. We don't serve all our kids. We got problems too, so everybody does.
What, just since we're there, what is the response when you invite kids from a marginalized group in? Because there's also a part in the reading that I do of they're feeling marginalized by the system, but yet now it's also their job to educate us on how they're marginalized,
Yeah,
right? So they're carrying this extra weight of feeling oppressed in some way, and now it's my job to educate all the privileged white people on why I'm oppressed in order to get out of the oppression.
yeah.
So,
I mean, you create an invitation. Well, there's two pieces there. One, you create an invitation to participate in the process. So when we were doing a transgender policy, we had transgender people, involved in that process. They were invited to participate and we got lots of input from them. But those were people who opted in and we asked for the input. And yeah, ultimately, I'm sorry, I'm a cisgender white dude. Yeah, when I was growing up, there were no gay or trans people in Bridgeport. It just was not a thing. I didn't get it at the time. And it wasn't until I had those conversations before I was like, oh, okay, I get it. And it just made that policy process a lot easier. Once I understood the perspective. Okay, wow. Yeah, I didn't know that we were gonna have an equity conversation. I was not prepared to have an equity conversation. So I highlighted this slide to, oh my goodness, now we're down to 3 minutes. So this is just where I put community engagement. So these are where areas of incongruence, where there was like community engagement was part of it. And we really have covered that. That your community engagement is certainly something you scored yourself high on, but it's also something that clearly you want to work on too. So it's really the point of this. This is a tool that we use for just really, we have prioritized standards here. And so these are big buckets of things that we feel as trainers are important and the research shows are important. So for culture, so cultural responsiveness. And so the color code is green means good, yellow means want to pay attention to that. Red is something that you should prioritize. I don't think there's any surprises up here. Cultural responsiveness is something that you were just talking about, you want to think about. Board member ethics, conduct ethics, you guys are solid on the basics, no problem there. You're a solid board. You get being a learning or organization and you understand that you're part of the system, that you're part of an intra-system, the school district, and that the school district is part of a larger ecosystem, okay? Innovation and creativity, we talked about that. That's really about budgeting time to just do it. I think you're all intelligent, engaged people. If you just had a little bit of room, a little time to do it, I think you'd all be really, really creative, okay? Vision directed planning, I could have color coded that red. It's just, I think this is one of the standout things you need to pay attention to. But community engagement, it sounds like you're doing all right. You're getting information out, you scored yourselves well. Accountability, that really is connected to vision directed. Okay. So that's the pattern there. Okay, so let's do something with it. This is the so what part. Okay. So we got 30 minutes. you got a bunch of data, you had a nice conversation, but okay, that's great, nice. What do you want to do?
Board goals and learning together. That's my 2 cents.
So this is what do you want to, yeah, what do you want to commit to? And so. Yeah. And maybe let's go around, let's go
We
around.
do round robin. I want everybody to say with them.
So we'll start with Jim. Picking you.
I think getting out and communicating with people in general and other government entities. I don't know how we're gonna do that. But I'd commit to that.
And when you say getting out, you're talking about board members getting out?
Yes. But then it also ties into what also has been said about having goals. And communicating those goals and communicating the stories associated with that. There needs to be something to communicate.
Yep. Mike, what you got?
Well, along with what Tim's saying, commit to getting out and seeing, there was a time when, trying to think of the guy's name, there was one legislator, Wildy. I think it's Wildy is his name.
Mhm.
Marty
But he-
Building.
Yeah, he and I used to trade emails, phone conversation, we had some really tense ones. And that was mostly my fault, but he was the only one that I found that would take the time to communicate with me.
Mhm.
I need to do more and find more people, try to find another one or two that get involved with, see if they can, whether it's budget or whatever, but communicate with. And I can bring back some information for the Lane SD, at least get you guys a little more acquainted with that, just good organization. Tim, can you grab me a pot or something?
This one. I haven't drank.
Oh, yeah.
I've been drinking this.
Use the fresh water,
I got
or do you want pop?
Yeah. But, the communicating with the community is really I was on city council for 3 years and then I've been here 8. And that's one that up until the last 2 or 3 years, I've noticed a huge difference with our school district going out, and it's not necessarily us, it's Mike and Julie and the effort they've made to get the word out. We've had a lot of meetings with community members. They've had dinners for them, they've had interpreters there. Really done a good job with that. And as a board, we need to help continue that. Because that communication thing is critical, and it's really hard to, we used to send letters out with the kids to the parents, and I don't know if they used it for firewood, to start a fire or what they did, but it was really hard to get information. Same thing on city council, it was really hard to get the information out. To me, that's, I think that they're doing Mike and his staff are doing a great job, but I think we need to do our share with that.
Okay.
I have a long list, but I will only say some of them. I think a couple things, like the main themes that I took away is goal setting with the district that, and we've talked about that before. And then how we integrate that into our monthly meetings, so that they're visible and useful and we're moving the dial. That was kind of my first big one. And I say district goals. I don't know if we want to think about how do we go back and forth between district goals and our strategic plan and how those two things work together. Because I would assume that they should work together. And both of which I think are important. And then another thing I took away was maybe kind of reimagining, use a Disney term, our monthly meetings. And yeah, and do we need to do what we've always done because we've always done it, or can we start to use it to talk about budget transparency, explanations? Can we have more student engagement in there? can we do some learning together? Not a lot, I don't want a whole book, but a couple articles, things like that. And find a way of how do we keep data in the front, not over data ourselves, right? But I liked the idea of picking like our 5 key items. And how do we keep those in front of us? And then when we're talking about our strategic goals and our strategic plan, we're using those to influence our decision making. That's it. That was a lot, but I'm sorry.
Good, good.
Sorry. You know me, I did it all out.
Good.
Is it my turn? Did you already go? What are you thinking?
I said in the beginning, I think we need goal setting. It's hard to go anywhere without the goal setting piece. I think that's something else I could remember.
Yeah, I agree. I think the goal setting piece, I felt like the vision of the board is important to me, actually. I feel like this was not a struggle, but I think it would have been different had those things been in place for me to answer the questions. I would have felt more confident in my answers had I known what the goals were. And since we're missing those goals, I think that this was harder for me to do well. And so I think goals, and then, like Candace said, maybe restructuring those meetings and maybe not what we've always done, maybe doing some other things.
Mhm.
And then,
Okay, what's next? How are you gonna start moving on this thing? So I hear, district goals. And so because we have a little bit of time, this raises the question, what is the board's role in strategic planning? Because a strategic plan is actually an operational plan. It's down here, it belongs to the superintendent. So it's not something that you're going to do, but setting strategic priorities or strategic direction for the district, that is your job and is important. Now, these things definitely, there's overlap. And you definitely should have informed oversight of, the superintendent's operational plan. You should know what he's thinking about, his strategies aimed at these priorities that you've come up with. And always be able to do strategic planning work or strategic prioritization is really the work that we do. We don't do strategic planning. So if superintendent reached out to me and said, would you facilitate my team in doing strategic planning internally? I would turn you down. I have colleagues that I work with that have that experience and expertise. I don't. I'm a governance person. I'm not an administration person. So we work in the governance realm. So it's strategic planning and up. So we kind of reverse engineer. So if having a vision and mission is important to you, we start with the buckets. We start with the priorities. And, we start with a brainstorming activity. We get a bunch of ideas on the wall. We cover the walls with Post-its with ideas. We do that. We don't do this just with the board. We have the superintendent bring in staff. You can bring in community members, key stakeholders. Wouldn't it be cool? Like you had the chief of police and, person who does juvenile, and mental health, and having some external stakeholders in here too to help us. That'd be really, really interesting to have that perspective in the room, have some parents, whatever, the board and superintendent figure that out. We get everybody in the room, we get a bunch of ideas on the wall, and then we start grouping them into themes. And those become our priorities. From there, we develop these mini vision statements for each of them. And then if it's important for the organization to have a mission and a vision, okay, we can do that. We can roll those things up. But the reality is they're window dressing, because those priorities, those are what goes down into the organization and guides the superintendent and the work that they do. That's what we're really interested in. So that's how we approach the work. And then once you have those priorities, we work with the superintendent. You guys find out and figure out what those big important indicators are for that. Like for student achievement, or third grade reading, and ninth grade on track, maybe some other ones, but it really depends on what the priorities end up being. And it really runs the gamut. But academics is always, it's core to what we do. There's always one of those. Facilities comes up. Social emotional learning or student wellness is one that has definitely popped up since the pandemic. So but that's the board's role. And then as the superintendent and his team develop the strategic plan, you have that informed oversight. There's check-ins and you have some understanding of that. And then you just continue that work as they're making progress, they're doing stuff operationally, student outcomes happen, you're checking in on those things. And it becomes a rhythmic activity of the leadership team to do those things on a regular basis. That's how that works. So yeah, I definitely that goal setting was the thing that really popped out to me. I think it's what's holding the board and really the district back right now. You could go from good to great really quick if you could focus your attention and prioritize your time and work more collaboratively with your district team. I think, yeah. And once you start doing that work, you'll have a story to tell. You'll want to go out and do community engagement. I think that'll just happen on its own. Yeah, and then think about, just setting aside some time for doing your own professional development. Or piggyback on the district's professional development, if that works. I don't know what you're using internally, but if you can bring board members into that, depends. Or you can get, we have partners that we're bringing alongside, particularly I'm thinking about cultural responsiveness. We have Center for Equity and Inclusion is partnering with OSBA to do equity work. We're deploying it's an equity prioritization program, and it's like how to do equity governance, but internally we don't have the expertise, so we're partnering with those. They're also partnering with the organization in Georgia called Long Talk. They're really excited to be working with us because apparently Oregon is kind of leading in the space. We feel like we're behind, but anyway, so there are opportunities, and there's a bunch of folks doing that type of work, so I'm sure that someone would like to do that. So I'm hearing prioritization, PD, and community engagement. And community engagement both with families and with stakeholders specifically. Okay.
How do we get started on the priorities piece? Can we have a facilitator?
You can. I think that that's a conversation you should have with your superintendent.
You have a letter in your email. We have Heidi McGowan, who is going to be facilitating our strategic planning process. We've set
You're
the dates.
already there.
Set the dates. We'll be naming the 5 bold steps, which are the themes to set the goals. And then the district, and we went through this process in 2019, and the board was engaged in it. But we'll come up with 5 bold steps, which would be the overriding goals. And then the district, we take it, and then we design the action plans to achieve those goals. And we've achieved that plan, 5-year plan in 3 years.
That's the part that I was thinking about when you're talking about the strategic plan is operational, because when Mike did such a great outreach with the community, surely there's operational pieces in there, but one of the big pieces that we heard was we need more career technical, but we need to focus on that. That to me feels like a board priority, as well as something he develops a long list of bullets on, right? That becomes his strategic plan.
Right.
So wrapped into one process was both, in my mind, unless I'm not separating it out.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah.
They overlap.
Yeah, they definitely
Okay,
overlap.
all right, that's good. Then I think we had board goals. We did not bring them every meeting. Because I remember the strategic plan, we talked about it, I'm highly invested in it through several things. So I remember those, but we didn't do it consistently in the board. It was from our own interest, I think.
So, and since you did this work just so recently, 2019 really isn't that long ago.
Yeah.
Don't trash the old one and start from
No,
scratch, do a refresh.
Well, we audited that one last spring.
Uh-huh.
We did a full audit on that plan, and we have accomplished each of the initiatives. We implemented them.
You're smart, all your operational goals.
all of them. All of the action plans, and so now we'll bring a summary back of that into this new planning process. And then we'll take it to the next level on our move, on our path to greatness.
Yep.
Our next level.
And I'll be honest, for me, this is where I don't know where I fit in.
I was just thinking.
I mean, and I'm not saying you're not doing a great job,
You're doing a
because you
great job.
are. I don't know where these two ships meet in the night.
It's, it's the presence of the board in the design team. Where the designs are made for the 5 bold steps of the main themes for the district to make progress, to increase student achievement and success.
Right, but then from there, like,
Mhm.
we decide these things, right, and you guys take that, this is not a take on how you do it, because you guys do a good job. This is, Candace doesn't find her space and where she lives in this. Is, you guys take them, you do a great job, you operationalize it. At what point do we engage in any part of that? Because, we all talked about very clear roles of what's operational and what's our role. And so this is where I find that gray area that I'm like, I don't know where I live. I don't know, and maybe I'm the only one.
Nope.
But I don't know
No,
where I live.
I don't think you are,
I'm not saying we should change it, I just
No,
don't
I
know.
think that like what we've been talking about, the boards, what the board does and what Mike does. And Mike does a great job of all of his figuring out the goals for the district and the strategic plan, but where are the board's goals of it? Like we were talking about what our goal is. Is our goal exactly what his goal is? Or is our goal to support his goals? Like, I don't really get.
So there are, what did you call them?
5 bold steps.
Five bold steps.
Mhm.
That's the first time I've heard that.
We actually had 6.
We just got rid
So-
of one.
No, we
So,
don't.
and I mean,
Change them.
and I mean, these come in all sorts of different names, pillars or focus areas or whatever, again, and call them whatever you want, 5 bold steps, 5, 6 bold steps. You guys end up being stewards of those.
Okay.
You hold them, you hold the district accountable to them. Okay, so you're gonna be checking in on them. But more importantly, they become a lens for the board. Because you have all sorts of things, all kinds of shiny objects or people saying things to you, trying to get your attention. But if you do this work right, where you're working with, it sounds like a design team. If you're working in collaboration with staff to identify and community, if you do it that way. These are the priorities that are going to move the dial for our kids. You want to focus on those things. You only meet, what, 12 times in a year for 2 hours. You have 24 hours of time when this governing body is convened and can take action. 24 hours a day. You spend a day. That's it. So your time is precious. So these priorities become a lens for you. And if someone says, you need to do such and such, or I'm angry about this, it's like, does it fit within these 6 bold steps? And if it doesn't, we're probably not gonna put it on an agenda. We're not gonna talk.
So maybe that's one of the ways we restructure our agenda, is we determine how agenda items fall within those steps. Yes, steps, and, sorry, no longer, and, I mean, of course, not everything we have regular business we have to do, but in general, when it's things we wanna take on. We look at it through that lens, cause I got lost in the steps, personally, partly because COVID and I had other, my own things, but.
You know, and things are gonna come up, maybe career and technical education, I don't know what the steps are. In Corvallis, we have a goal, we call ours goals, we have district goals. They're not board goals are different. Those are professional development goals. That's what you're developing, what we just did, those are board goals.
Okay.
So you're gonna work on engaging in planning and community engagement and professional development. Those are your board goals, professional development for you.
Got it.
One of our district goals is real world learning. Embedded in that is career and technical education. This is just one of the things in there. So there are things nested, these ideas that are nested in that. It started as posted on the wall, but I mean, they get embedded in there. And so, people are going to talk to you about career and technical education. And so that would make it through the screen, the lens, because that's something we're paying attention to. Yeah, let's talk about CTE. Awesome.
And that's a huge conversation to have with politicians on they're getting their support for funding for CTE programs. That's where we need the money right now.
Was the article that I just read.
You said it, isn't
Yes, I will. It talks about how it's the kids on the margin not graduating, it's the CTE that gets them to the graduation.
it? I am 100% believe that.
Yeah, they just darn
read?
compelling, very compelling.
Yeah.
And I bet your superintendent has data on that too.
Mhm.
CTE.
And we
took-
already knew that.
Took one, or CTE concentrators, ones that take more than one CTE course.
Mhm,
Yeah. It's pretty powerful.
mhm.
Okay, you've got 4 goals. That was the desired outcome of all of this. Hang on to this. There's more information in here. So when you achieve these goals, come back to this report and take another look.
So what's the cadence of successful board? I like to measure myself against successful people. What is the cadence of successful board does something like a self-evaluation?
Yeah, that's an ongoing conversation. Our previous one, we recommended doing every year. This one, I think, has more shelf life. I think you could go 2 years.
Okay.
There's a lot here.
Yeah.
I think unless
You know,
we
you
had
can-
significant turnover.
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
Yeah, so I think that if you didn't do this again for another 2 years, that's fine. But I would strongly recommend doing it with us, because if you do it with us, then you get to see the before and
We
after.
benchmark it. Thank you.
This data does
I
not
love
go away.
benchmarking.
It's stored in the database. If I come back in 2 years and do this with you again,
Mhm,
I'll have the 2022 data and then look at it in 2024 and
mhm.
see that improvement in, those areas for growth.
Mhm.
Can I have, before you guys leave, can I get 2 or 3 minutes to talk about that strategic process?
I
Absolutely.
think that is a great way. That's a really good thing for you guys to do.
Mhm. Go, you're on, Mike.
Okay, so I sent you an invitation to participate in the strategic process, the strategic planning process. And we'll have 2 teams. We'll have a design team, and that is the greater community team. So we'll be bringing in all of the other stakeholders from throughout Creswell and other agencies, ESD, maybe even, the last time we had Cottage Grove was there, Peace Health was there. We had a lot, over 40 people on our design team. And so in my letter, I asked for 3 people to participate in those design team meetings. There are 3 set up for us. 3 meetings, and we have a 4th that's optional at the end, just in case we don't get to our 5 or our main theme. But we do need to establish the main themes, and that's the goal of the design team. And then we have a smaller committee that meets in between those design team meetings. And that a smaller committee, the lead team, will be interpreting the information that was processed in the design team and how we're going to reach out and engage the community in the areas that we're discussing in there. So do we want to have a survey, a community forum, both? How are we going to gather data and get more community members engaged? And then work with that data and bring it back to the next design team meeting so that we're presenting data based on the subjects or the discussions that we were having. And it's just a cycle that keeps continuing like that to evolve at the main things that this comprehensive needs assessment identified by the entire community and other agencies that we engage with regularly. So I asked for 3 on the design team and 1 on the smaller lead team, but I'll take 4 and 2. We can do that because we'll have 4 groups or 4 groups of people that regularly will be working together in the design team of 40. So if I have 4 board members, that would give us 1 at each group with each during each design team. And then the 2 that are helping with or processing the data and the information and preparing it for the next design team meeting to move forward. And also, the mission and vision and our belief beliefs and values. We have worked on that. We're going to audit that. And then when COVID hit, we were at the point of where we had already processed it with the community, wordsmith the statements, we had it all set. But we didn't get to the finish line on it. So we're gonna revisit that and cement it this time for the district vision, our mission vision, beliefs and values. And touch that up.
Good. Okay, that sounds great. So we need to respond to the email that you sent out on where our interest lies.
Or, yeah, whichever one you want to participate in. The smaller committee, we can change up after the design team does its work, because then the smaller committee will not be processing data anymore to bring back to the design team. We'll be shifting that committee into the mission vision development and that work. So you can interchange at that point or all come on or however you want to do that to finish that piece up. Because that really is how people, what they will identify with when they come to visit our district online or what have you.
Do we have quorum issues if there's four?
Yeah,
of us?
you'll have to know, you have 4 and you're doing district work, so you'll have to notice them. It's not a big deal.
Okay.
Just notice it.
Well, that's why we went 3 and 1,
One.
but we can do 3 and 2 or 3 and 3 between the two and stay away from the quorum.
It's gonna slow you down. It would create some work. Some additional work to notice them.
Okay.
So 3 and 3 then. And if you can't make one, we'll catch you up, but you'll be up to speed if you're on one or the other committee on the journey.
So I'm
Maybe
reading the
right.
email. So the design team and design team meet on everybody meet those days. The dates that you provided, it would be the same dates for both
No,
groups. That's what I was.
just the design team.
Okay, and the steering team doesn't have dates.
It doesn't, we'll establish those dates based on the schedule that we can
Okay.
put together in between.
Okay. Okay, so we have 4 goals. I have 3 main categories that I have for notes: priorities, which I believe will come out of this process. So we know that's in the works. We need to engage through what.
Those are your 5 or 6 bold steps. That's what those priorities will be.
Our learning community and community engagement. So what I recommend is when Debbie and I set the agenda with Mike for the next meeting, these last 2, the learning PD and community engagement, will be on that agenda so that we can brainstorm how we want to tackle that. So that we don't lose it. So be thinking in the background, write down additional notes. I mean, we've already got some ideas here. But that way we can try something on one agenda, see how it goes. Okay. Okay.
One thought just to throw out there, because we are headed into the abyss of the mathematics adoption, is that we can set up PD as we're beginning that process, the research on it with the board.
That would be fantastic.
Yeah.
That can be your PD, one of your PD or a VP. That's a long one. That's gonna be very,
You guys already
intense,
don't get
deep.
math PD at your house? Cause I do.
That is deep. I know our staff has been feeding us articles as well.
yeah, and it's contentious out there in the community. It can be anyway. It's very polarized.
It's hot in Corvallis. It's a very challenging for us.
Most parents don't want to touch their children's math, so I find that interesting.
The ones that think that the math is the way they want isn't, the content isn't what they expect and want their kids to learn. They are very, and it goes beyond Creswell. Those connections, those veins run all the way through to Portland, down south and over. But you have a lot of outside people that want to influence what the decision this board makes around that.
Well,
I think that's a son, I would recommend that the board become very good students of your staff on that topic.
Deal.
I like it.
Candace's got
My husband's
front
a
row seat.
high school math teacher.
I just think it's really cool that the really strong signal that came out of the board self-assessment is that you need to do strategic planning and that your superintendent was just like there, already there. That just is, it's really cool. That was not planned in any way. It just, you're in the right place, doing the right things at the right time. So good on you. It's gonna be a good school year for you guys.
Okay, I think so too. All right, anything else? All right, we're